Hi everyone! The purpose of this presentation is to talk about different methods and tools for telling your narrative. Specifically, we'll mainly be looking at selecting a point of view and maintaining the rhythm of your story. Descriptive language is an important part of narrative writing. As you can see, it's the last characteristic on the screen. So we've created an additional presentation on just that, so you can access that on our website if you want to find out more about that. The first thing you're going to want to determine is who will be telling the story. This way you ensure that you are conveying the thoughts and insights of that narrator. Generally, memoirs are told from the perspective of the subject of the story or someone close to them or the event. And while you're obviously welcome to branch out from that, doing it that way typically achieves the best connection with your readers and encourages empathy. Depending on which point of view you selected in the previous slide, you will end up with either an internal or external narrator. So an internal narrator is able to tell the story either in present or past tense and personally reflects on its significance within the story, whereas an external narrator can provide an outside perspective on the story, stating what was observed, heard, and what their thoughts are on the matter. The point of view you select will also influence the distance and sympathy in your writing. The distance refers to the closeness of the narrator to the story and the resulting ability of the readers to connect with them, while on the other hand, sympathy refers to how much the author empathizes with characters within the story. Another important aspect to consider about your writing is the voice you want to convey. So basically that's the tone the readers hear based on the narrator's writing style. Depending on how words and phrasing is used, it can impact the way a reader understands the story and how they understand that the narrator feels about the things they're talking about. So now that we've defined point of view and voice, we can look at the connection between the two. The point of view that you pick will have a direct impact on the voice of your story because you'll be using the language and tone that that person would realistically use. The example on the screen highlights the different language and insights you would be able to use telling the story from an adult point of view compared to that of a child. Now we're going to look at which is better for your story. So on the screen, there's some benefits and drawbacks of using different viewpoints. So while writing from the point of view of a child can elicit more empathy from readers than an adult's view can, it can also limit writers' ability to incorporate life experience and wisdom. Of course, you can transition back and forth between the two using flashbacks. You just have to be careful that you make it clear to the reader so that way they can easily follow along when you're making that transition. Another important aspect of narrative writing is the rhythm. So this can include variation in sentence length and structure, which can help you achieve your intended voice. So for instance, adding an exclamation mark at the end of one sentence may show excitement, while adding it to the end of every sentence may imply shouting or anger. So try to change up the length of your sentences to provide variety, clarity, and a more natural flow to your writing. While particularly enticing sentences may add creativity and flair to your story, they're typically best used in the beginning or end of a thought or paragraph. This placement minimizes the chance of distracting the reader from the overall story. Here are some examples of some standout sentences that are in famous books that grab the reader's attention before diving into the narrative. These are some more famous examples of closing sentences that act as good closers because they're more generalized and allow the reader to contemplate their thoughts on the story after reading it rather than midway through. The next part of rhythm is the length of your paragraphs. Choosing effective places to end and start new paragraphs not only makes reading the text more enjoyable, but it also helps to separate different ideas and time frames, such as flashbacks. Short paragraphs consisting of one or two sentences can also be helpful to provide a transition between two ideas. So when proofreading your work, look through large pieces of text and ask yourself if you're trying to fit too many thoughts into one paragraph and if you need to start a new one. The last topic of this presentation is the overall structure of your story. Now that you have the tools to craft effective sentences and paragraphs, we can look at how to organize them to best tell your story. Ideally, your story will have an orientation to the people and places you're going to discuss. Then you will look at a complication that the subject faces. After moving through a series of events, you end with a resolution or result to give the reader closure. This ending does not have to be complete or joyful, it's just there to provide an end to the narrative. So this overall structure isn't rigid and you don't have to follow it exactly, it just gives a good basis to give a natural flow to your writing. Hopefully you've learned a bit more about narrative writing throughout this presentation and understanding a bit more about selecting your point of view and how it impacts the voice that your readers hear, and a bit more about how to structure your narrative writing through organization of paragraphs or different lengths of paragraphs and sentences. And if you want any more information on using descriptive language within your narrative writing, please feel free to check out our additional PowerPoint.